If you don't have a lot of equity, then you can't really sell. There is a cost of selling, right? So you have commissions for the agents, you have escrow fees, all these other fees. Sometimes there's credits you have to account for if there's certain repairs that need to be done. Basically, you need to have an idea of what you're going to net to see if it's even worth having the conversation. Hey everyone, Rick Albert here with another episode of The Key to the City of Angels. This is going to be a special episode where it's just me. A little bit about me, if this is the first time you're tuning in. I am a local realtor, real estate agent, real estate broker associate here in the Southern California area, specifically Los Angeles and part of Ventura County, kind of the Conejo Valley, that whole area. Today, we're going to talk about something very kind of unique. We're going to talk about specifically on whether or not you should sell your home based on 10 questions that I put together. Now, these questions I've put together are based on years of talking to sellers, and many of them I'm telling them not to sell, right? Like, not everybody should sell, and that's why I came up with this, because it helps people kind of organize their thoughts. Now, one of the caveats to this, and we'll go through this, is even though there's 10 questions and you think, okay, I scored 8 out of 10, I should sell, or hey, I scored 5 out of 10, I'm on the fence, some questions might be worth more to you. So therefore you might be like, oh, no, I really should sell, or this isn't as big of a deal. That sort of deal. So let's kind of jump into it. So the first and foremost is, do you have at least 25% equity in the home? The reason why this is so important is because if you don't have a lot of equity, then you can't really sell. There is a cost of selling, right? So you have commissions for the agents, you have escrow fees, all these other fees. Sometimes there's credits you have to account for if there's certain repairs that need to be done. Basically, you need to have an idea of what you're going to net to see if it's even worth having the conversation, right? For some people, they're going to net $1 and it's just not really worth it. Other people might net a few $100,000, and that's real money that they can do something with. Let's go into question number 2 is, do your mortgage payments, your HOA dues, your property taxes, your insurance, is owning the home a financial strain? If it is, then that might be a reason to sell. But again, it may not be the only reason, because we'll go into other things later on. But basically, are you in a different financial situation than you might have been when you first bought the home? Or did you do a cash out refinance to invest in something that didn't pan out well? Either way, you have to take a look at your personal finance and say, is this a viable option? Next question, number 3, does the home no longer fit your lifestyle, right? So is the home too small and you have a kid on the way? Is the home too big because your kid just left for college? Are you looking for more walkability that you didn't have before because you don't want to drive as much? Did you get a new job and you need to move closer to work? Are you an investor and you realize that maybe the LA market isn't for me anymore and I want to invest in other markets? Or I want to jump up to multifamily. So for example, with my first house hack, which was a condo, I sold the condo and started investing in multifamily out of state. So my lifestyle changed where like I didn't want to deal with the HOA. I wanted to kind of start expanding and start getting units. And this was a reason. So it actually was a lifestyle choice in terms of how I wanted my investment strategy. Now, the next one, number 4, are there any investments you're willing to take on or that you're not willing to take on, right? How old's the roof? How old's the sewer line? Does that need to be replaced? HVAC, kitchen remodel, bathrooms. What work needs to be done for the house? It doesn't make sense to do it, because in some cases, when you go to sell, you can negotiate some of those items with a buyer. So for example, if it costs 20 grand to redo the roof, maybe you negotiate with the buyer and you only have to pay 10 grand, right? Because maybe the buyer's like, look, the house is a good deal, whatever, let's split the cost. So you have to kind of take a look, in the condo world, they do what are called reserve studies. They basically look throughout the entire complex, look at all the systems, roofs, sidewalks, everything. And they say, okay, based on our assessment, you have this many years left. And then this is how much money it's going to cost. Do you have the money in savings? So sometimes if you have a house that's going to be too big of a project, maybe it makes sense to sell, because if you do the renovations, you may not get dollar for dollar back, right? If you replace the roof today and spend 20 grand, it's not like buyers are willing to pay a $20,000 premium. they're already expecting a working roof. So whether the roof's brand new, 5 years, 10 years, typically I haven't seen a big difference. The next one is your neighborhood seeing strong buyer demand? Or have there been high sales? Sometimes neighborhoods that you first moved into may not have been desirable. Maybe that's how you were able to afford it all those years ago. But now it's a super hot market. Maybe the schools got better. Maybe there's another major development with shopping nearby. And you're like, now might be a good time to sell, right? There were people who sold in Inglewood because of SoFi Stadium, despite the fact that you might have to factor in drunk drivers, traffic, noise, all that. But people started flocking there because they're like, oh, cool, SoFi Stadium. This must be a good investment. So take a look at the neighborhood, see the days on market, see what kind of prices. Are they getting over asking, under asking, at asking? All three are different variables. You always have to look at least 3 comparable sales if possible. But if there is strong demand, you may want to sell. Or to be fair, if there's weak demand, because maybe there's something going on in the neighborhood that's making it less desirable, you may want to sell, right? Because you're like, hey, I don't want to be part of this. So it's just a preference. There's no right or wrong answer. It just depends on what you're seeing. Number 6. This is the big one. If I sell, is there a better investment for the money, right? If I sell, can I buy a better house for me and my family? If I sell, can I buy a better investment property, right? Because this can apply to investors. If I sell, could I invest in my dream of owning this business? Because right now we're seeing a big boom in retirees coming up, and all these businesses need to sell. And for some of them, because there's an oversupply from what I'm hearing, you can actually get a pretty good deal on buying a business. It's kind of cool. So maybe you do sell, take the few $100,000 and go buy that little shop that you've been wanting to do. So the question really is, do you have an idea on how you want to spend the money? Then, are you planning on moving in 2 years regardless? Like, in other words, if you're looking at this and saying, look, I already know I'm going to get this job promotion, but the job promotion is going to require me to move to the other side of the country, or whatever the case may be, if you know you're going to move, that could influence your decision on whether or not to sell now versus waiting, right? Because everybody's life changes. A great example is honestly the entertainment industry. Not everybody's working right now. So you may be looking at this and saying, yeah, I got to move in the next 2 years anyways. I got to go move to Atlanta where they're doing filming. I got to go move overseas where they're doing filming. Either way, I know within the next 2 years, I may have to sell or at least move. Because the other option is, of course, to rent it out, which we'll go into later, which is right now. So if you had to rent it out, does it cash flow, right? Are all the bills covered if you were to rent this out? This is going to be very common for people who've owned their homes for a long time, where they've been able to keep up with appreciation of rents. So yeah, maybe your bills all in are $2,000 a month, but you can rent this thing out for $4,000. That's very real, depending on when you buy, what interest rate, all that kind of stuff. Because you don't have to sell every property you own. Sometimes it makes sense to rent it out. That's the whole point of building wealth. It isn't necessary to sell. It's to hold on, get the cash flow, tax benefits, loan buy down, and all that stuff. Now, the next question. This one is very subjective. Are you emotionally ready to leave the home behind? So one of the things that makes residential real estate very unique is there's 2 sides to evaluating a property. There's 2 sides to addressing properties. There's the analytical side, right? It's what are the comps, what are the financial strains, all that. But then you do have, but this was my family home. This is the house that my kids grew up in. This is the house that we brought our daughter home in, right? This is where we found out that our dog died, whatever, right? There could be emotional ties to a specific property, even if it's a rental. Hey, this is my first rental, and I would hate to lose this because this represents everything we've built, right? If you're willing to leave behind, the answer is yes. right? Hey, I'm okay if this sells. I will be able to sleep at night knowing that I'm emotionally okay to do it. Then the last question, if you were to rent it out, are you in a market where there's any sort of rent control? This is where it gets really tricky, because if we take this at face value of, all right, all these are worth 1 point, most of my clients are looking at this one question and saying, no, Rick, that question's worth 100,000 points. It's infinite. I have clients who have sold their highest grossing rentals strictly because of this one question. So you have to say, okay, if I were to sell the house, is it in Los Angeles? Is it subject to the rent stabilization ordinance? No. Okay, then chances are it falls into the just cause ordinance. That's a whole nother thing. Is it subject to California statewide rent control? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. These are this is more of a business decision than it is an emotional one, right? You have to be prepared if you rent out your property. What are the local jurisdictions dealing with tenants, all of that, because you are going to be inheriting that no matter what. So there you go. From equity to rent control, those are the 10 questions you have to ask yourself. If you want, I'm happy to send this to you as a guide. Feel free to comment below wherever you're watching this. If you're watching on YouTube, Instagram, wherever, if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcast, feel free to reach out to me at Rick B. Albert on Instagram. DM me and I'll get you this survey. Love to get your thoughts. Talk to you guys soon. Want to keep unlocking the secrets to building real wealth in Los Angeles? Stick around for the next episode. Tap the video on screen to keep watching.